Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Trey. I'm one of the pastors here, and I just would like to, on behalf of the family and everyone, and friends, welcome. Welcome. Glad you're here. Wish it was in different circumstances, but you know what? Today's a celebration. And so we're going to do that today as we honor the memory of Susie, Angel, and I would just ask that you guys would chime in when we ask you to. There's going to be a time for that, and just keep in mind, she's in a better place, all right? And we're rejoicing in that today, and that's what we're all here for. So with that, we're going to get started.
All right. I had the privilege of knowing Juan and Susie for about 12 years now, which may be longer than some of you and half as long as a lot of you as well. But I'm honored and privileged to be here. And Juan requested this song, and I hope that it brings you guys some peace this afternoon. Beautiful and tragic, this life you've given me. Dangerously fragile and more feeble than it seems. Yeah. More feeble than it seems. Yeah. Some days are filled with gladness, others I can't stop the rain. Guide me through this madness, Lord, I offer you the reins. Wrap your wings around us. Whisper wisdom in our ears. May your serenity surround us. Wrap your wings around us, yeah, around us. Fearful and courageous, this heart you've given me. Alarmingly contagious and tearing at the seams. Yeah, it's tearing at the seams. It's tearing at the seams. It's tearing at the seams. Yeah, yeah. So wrap your wings around us. Whisper wisdom in our ears. May your serenity surround us. Wrap your wings around us. Yeah, around us. I can't get over it. No, I can't get over it. That when I can't get over it, you help me through. Lord, you help me through. Yeah. Wrap your wings around us. Whisper wisdom in our ears. May your serenity surround us. And wrap your wings around us. Whisper wisdom in our ears. May your serenity surround us. Wrap your wings around 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 us.
Amen. Thank you, Lamar. Our beloved Gloria Susie Angel, age 52, was called to our Heavenly Father on Saturday, August 20th, 2022. Susie is survived by her life partner and husband, Juan Munoz, her parents, Nancy and David Allen Brundage, her sister, Jackie Brigham, and husband, Sean, brother, John Henry Angel, Jr., treasured nieces, Audrey Brigham, Desiree Brigham, nephew, Cole Brigham, and great-nephew, Junior Nixon, along with numerous friends. Susie and Juan were partners of Austin New Church for around 14 years, and that's nearly as long as I've been here. As their pastor, I've seen a lot of their spiritual and personal milestones through those years, but family and friends over the last few weeks have helped me fill in some of the gaps. And what I found confirmed many of my suspicions of Susie, that she was a very talented, brilliant, fun, artistic, passionate, deeply caring, and empathetic soul who loved to dance, loved life, and loved others. I found out that as a young girl, she loved to ride horses. That is a fact I did not know. And that at one time we know of, that she would literally go without and give up her own lunch in grade school when another child had left theirs at home. I also learned that Susie loved to draw with her feet. I also found out that around the age of 10, she stole Juan's heart. See, they met in grade school. They were 9 and 10 years old. Juan told me that it was love at first sight. Is that right? For you, I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure you had to walk by a few more times. Yeah. But you told the teacher that day, you said, I'm going to marry that girl. First time you saw her. And I bet the teacher was just thinking, what a silly, silly little boy. Yeah. But we know that to be true now, all these years later. At the age of 17, Susie's family moved from California to Austin, and the couple was distant for a while. A few years later, Juan was featured in a local newspaper article, and in it he said if he ever lost his job there, he would move to Texas. I don't know if your boss saw the article or whatever, but you were laid off a short time later, and the couple was reunited. Okay. When Susie, I learned this the other day, when Susie passed away, they were 5 days shy of their 20th anniversary. 5 days. I've always admired their faith in God, their tenacity in assimilating, and their determination in serving others. When I met them, we were a young church who would go downtown and serve the homeless community. And they were both right there every single time. Whether serving others or simply attending church, I've always thought of the hardships and the Herculean effort it takes my family to get to church. And what, I can only imagine trying to get up and get out the house and all that stuff, and just, I've always been amazed by that. In her professional career, she worked for and with the Coalition of Texans with Disabilities. She was a tireless worker and paved the way for many people with disabilities in Texas and throughout the world. Maybe her friend Laura, I don't even know where you went. There she is, way in the back. You'll fill us in on a little of those details. But I was reading back through one of the biographies, and this pen to paper, it's a disabilities-focused creative writing contest, opened doors for a lot of us and a lot of folks to see it with new eyes, a world that we would never understand. She won many awards and commendations along the way, but I would bet that her desire to bring dignity and equality will be hard to ever top. I know them to be ardent baseball fans. Huge fan of the Round Rock Express. The only game I ever went to, this is a mission, I live in Buda, so I don't get up there very much. That north of the river stuff's crazy. The only game I ever went to, I saw them there, and Juan told me they would go to all the games. And he said, we love the Express and the Ryans. You know the Ryans, the owners of the Round Rock Express. You may not know this, but Reed Ryan and the organization provided not one, but 2 vans for Juan and Susie. And you guys know how critical that was for them. And this allowed them access to things that they would not otherwise have access to. And it allowed us access to them. So to the Ryans, I thank you. Something I did not know when I visited Boston and went to a Red Sox game this summer was that Susie was a huge Red Sox fan. And I showed up to the hospital one day in this t-shirt. And I'm just going to take this off if I don't lose my mic doing it. I'm going to lose my mic. It's fine. And Juan alerted me to the fact, and I'm proud to wear this today for her. I want to share with you a couple of tender moments that I recall. Ladies, one was when Juan and Susie wanted to be baptized. You remember this, Juan? We formerly met at Jackie's Dance Studio in South Austin. Anybody know that place? Remember that? A wonderful thing about Jackie's was the swimming pool where we did baptisms by immersion. And Susie emailed me one day and said that her and Juan both wanted to make public professions of their faith through baptism. And what I knew, of course, was this wasn't going to be a typical baptism. I had planned to help with another pastor to help them down in the water, and however many people it took, we were going to get them into the water, do the baptism, and it was going to be awesome. But for whatever reason, and I feel like I know the reason, Susie told me, Pool's Edge, we can't do this. We just can't do this. So whether it was the fear of going down into the water or the logistics of the whole thing, we decided to make a pivot. And we said, borrowing a tradition from another faith tradition, we said, how about we sprinkle? And they were pleased with that, as was everybody there. And so I got to baptize my friends, Juan and Susie, that day, and it was beautiful. Another time I got to be a part of their 10-year anniversary party we held in the neighborhood community center where I lived at the time. It was beautiful, and vows of love and commitment were exchanged once again. But then Juan and Susie both came out of those chairs, hit the floor, and had a dance together. And to this day, I can't really think of anything more beautiful than that moment. Seeing you guys doing your thing, man. It was awesome. And lastly, in one of the facilities Susie was in recently, I went in one afternoon and Juan wasn't there. And so I got all Susie's time. And we sat there and we talked for a bit. And she was telling me about just, how this staff was kind of short, not doing right by her. And she was not feeling great. And she was still in pain and all the things. And she said, well, would you pray for me? And being as that's what I do, I said I would be happy to. So I prayed. I prayed for God to ease her pain. I asked God to give insights to the doctors and nurses. I asked God to allow some of the steps that were being taken to give her nutrition to actually kick in and give her some relief and give her some comfort and give her some rest. And then Susie chimed in. In that moment, she gave herself completely to God. Probably like she had every day, her whole life. But I got to witness it. She told him that her life was in his hands, that it was all up to him, and that she was his and that she loved him. At this point, this man in front of you was bawling like a baby. And she looked up and she said, "This is the first time you've ever heard me pray." And I said, yes, it is. And I have never been in the presence of somebody so trusting, so loving, and so completely adoring of God. And I thank God for that moment in time. She was teaching me how to pray. She was teaching me. And my desire to this day is to be that in love with God. I don't know about all of you, but Susie was a lot of things. To me, she was a teacher. She was a fighter, probably one of the strongest women I know. And she was also a beautiful creation of God. And what I'd like you to do, if you will, think about what Susie was to you and shout those out to me right now. I'm going to give, when you say it, and it's clear that I've gotten it, I'm going to repeat it for the folks online. So let me hear, what was Susie to you? She was a friend, inspiration, strength. Teacher back there? Poet? A light? Heart? Prophet? Advocate? Dancer? Comedian. I didn't hear you back there. A delight. Friend, servant, brave. Source of energy. What was it? Great listener. Motivator. Super nice. Ray of sunshine. Smile. What was it? Sassy? Juan got an amen up here in the front row. What else was she? A fighter. A couple more. A warrior. And what? Tough negotiator and artist. Absolutely. Absolutely. Susie, you were all this and so much more. You were all this and so much more, and we are certainly going to miss you. But we rejoice today that you are with your Creator, running and jumping, laughing and singing, and no longer bound by the limitations of this world, but made whole and new by the one who looks at you and says, "You are my child, and in you I am well pleased. Well done, good and faithful servant. Come into your rest." Amen. Juan, start your trek up here, sir. We've got a reading. If you're looking at the program thing, we've got a reading there. And what I've done is I've put the lyrics on the screen, and I'd like us all to read poetry together. Okay? When I was at the funeral home with the family, this was just one that everybody, just in a second, said, "This is it. This is the one." So if you will, we're going to read Angel Dance together, and I'm going to be reading from the screen too. And join me, all right? There is a noise in heaven, a happy, joyful sound, heard as the feet of children are set to dancing all around. They are being taught by angels, no time for sadness there, keeping step with music as it rises in the air. A new song they hear playing, it banishes all pain and set their feet to dancing. None are sick or lame. With new unhindered cadence, their eyes are shining bright. They are dancing with the angels in the glory of heaven's light. All right, Juan. We're going to share a little bit because I know you want to. You're a man of many words and talents. Let it rip. Well, shoot, that one's not working, is it?
But I want to thank
I'm going to hold it.
everybody that come celebrate Susie. Thank you for coming, and I want to give thank you, Mom, for bringing all into our life. He did many of us, and there are many more that he does. So thank you, Nancy and David, Johnny and Jackie. Jackie was there a 2 weeks from life. He was there every day. Laura, I don't know where Laura is. He was there for many hours with us. And I didn't want to thank Jay for coming up to the hospital and being with us. I didn't want to thank you guys, and let's celebrate Susie life, not tears, because Susie don't want it that way. Thank you, everybody, and I love everybody, and thank you.
All right. There you go. Name it right down the middle, Juan. Please. Jana, come on up. Let's start over. Okay. Well, come up here. You want to use this? You want to come down there? The stair. We removed the stairs. All right, good.
My name's Jana King, and I have known Susie and Juan for a long time. I met them at a grill out. Well, actually, it was a backyard barbecue at Matthew Hansen's house. And went over and visited with them, got acquainted, and that's where I found out that there isn't any place or anybody that Susie and Juan don't want to be with. If there's an event, they wanted to be there. They have serious FOMO. But what a joy their friendship has been. As Trey mentioned, we had grill outs frequently down, and at the beginning they were at 7th and Netchess, which is just a blank parking lot. And we'd have them in rain, shine, blazing heat, freezing cold. It didn't matter, we were there. But Susie and Juan were also there. And if it was blazing hot, Susie would maybe put on a hat to keep that bald head of hers from getting sunburned. And if it was freezing cold, she donned that, Red Sox jacket and try and keep herself warm through all of those times. And it was at one of those grill outs that Juan happily told me about their courtship that Trey was telling you about, meeting when they were babies and him following her to Austin because he was enamored by this older woman who was, which he was happy to remind me of at the hospital because I said she was 51. And he went, no, she's 52, I'm 51. So he was enamored by her and he followed her, and it was I got such a kick out of their romance of being together for so many years. But I tell you, since Susie's been in the hospital, I went back and started reading some of the things that she had written, and mainly what thrilled me was watching her video about her faith. And she said when she was younger, she always tried to go to churches and be involved in church, but people always wanted her to go to be healed and to go to faith healers and to pray harder. And interestingly enough, she said, I didn't need to be healed. I was really comfortable in the body that I had. And she said, during high school, this is going to get me. God met her in the hall and said, hang on. He said, Susie, I am wonderfully happy with you as you are. You are precious to me in your body because I have a job for you. I want you to take the message of the disabled to the able-bodied community. And she did that with a relish. She joined that coalition of Texans with Disabilities. She wrote letters. She told me to write letters. She was interested in all things concerning the disabled community. And what thrilled me was that she counted her body as an asset. So, I can't think of Susie in heaven, but to think of her, and I think she's 5'9". She might be 5'10". I'm not sure. Who knows? But 5'9", 5'10", in a slim, agile body, dancing before the Lord, singing her favorite song. Hang on. It was, It's Your Breath in My Lungs. And the chorus goes, all the earth will shout your praise, our hearts will cry, and our bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And I'm going to recognize Susie when I get there because I'm going to hear her that horrible laugh and find her right away. I miss her, but I look forward to seeing her.
Chase. You've got it all printed out.
Thank you all. So I was asked by Juan about an hour ago if I would read for Jackie since she couldn't make it. So I want you to picture me as Susie's sister and not Chase, and I'm not going to change the words she sent me, which might kind of sound weird as I'm saying it. Just picture Susie's wonderful sister. So Susie was the good sister. Growing up, she was sure to keep me in line. I tried to boss everyone around, but she would not allow it. She was sure to tell on me when I was trying to be sneaky. I am grateful she watched out for me, even if it meant she had to tell on me. Getting in trouble as a kid is much better than getting in trouble as an adult. Susie always thought of others, and that's what was best for them. Susie showed how much she cared to those she loved and anyone who crossed her path. Her last words to me were thank you. Although she went through so much, she wanted to be sure that I knew she was glad I was there with her as she settled into Cornerstone. In elementary school, a classmate did not have his lunch, and she gave half her sandwich without even thinking about it. There are countless examples throughout her life where she showed kindness to others. Susie had a great faith. Although she went through so much fighting cancer, this didn't stop her from believing in God and his plans for her. She was often encouraged by Joyce Meyer's sermons. She enjoyed listening to anything Joyce had to say. When Susie was in the ICU, she told me Joyce was going to be in town. I don't think it was a coincidence that Joyce was in Austin the weekend that Susie passed and went home to Jesus. Thank you all for being here to celebrate my sister and the wonderful life she lived.
You got it?
Hey everyone, I'm Laura. I worked with Susie for about more than 10 years, which seems wild. And there were two things I wanted to say. The first, Jana kind of took, so thanks. No, that was a beautiful story about how Susie encountered her purpose in life. I remember when she told me that story in this tiny office that we shared at CTD at the Coalition for years. There's one person in there now, and I look back at it and I'm like, how did we do that with like Susie's chair and she was on the floor and I'm in this desk? Like, I don't know, but we did. And I remember her telling me that story, and I just was so amazed and grateful to have that insight into her life and why she was doing what she was doing. For example, the pen to paper creative writing contest that Trey mentioned, we did for about 10 years together. We read some incredible stuff, and we're so grateful to be able to support some incredible work by some amazing authors, even paying them, which is something that we learned is not terribly common. Lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. We had to put the contest on hiatus a few years ago. It was just getting too big for us to keep doing between the two of us, which is great, but also kind of sad. But the last thing that we were able to complete together was work on an anthology with a publisher who publishes work by authors with disabilities. And that is called Accessing Parenting. It'll be coming out in June, and I will do whatever I need to do to make sure all of y'all know when it come out, and you can buy 100 copies each and give them to everyone you know. She and I share the editing credit on that. And getting that work in print, in a way, getting her own work into print is, I know, something that meant a lot to her, and it means a lot to me. So that is one thing that I wanted to say, is that she really did live that God-given mission just in everything that she did. The second thing, and I hope that I hope lightning doesn't strike anywhere in here. Obviously, Susie was a devout Christian. I'm not. I'm an atheist. Thank you for welcoming me into this space. But she was very free about talking about her faith with me, and I knew that I could talk about my spiritual beliefs with her, and there was no judgment or fear that, one would try to challenge or convince or judge the other. And I was thinking about it today, and I realized, I don't have that dynamic with any of the other people of faith in my life, even my family. That is just one of those we don't talk about it subjects. I feel like that's probably pretty common, but not with Susie. And I don't know that I told her how spectacular that is to me. So I'm telling all of y'all, and I hope that we can all continue to pursue that kind of open-mindedness, good listeningness, all of those things that came up from the group just now that Susie was, as we honor her memory in so many ways, including that one. Thank you all so much.
No, sorry, you're not on the agenda, Juan. Yes. Here, hang on.
I forgot to put it out. I got real cards for everybody. I forgot to put them out.
We'll pass them out for you.
So I forgot. I'm sorry, but
All right, you're good. We forgive you, Juan. We forgive you. You're good. You're golden. Laura, did you disappear? You are so very welcome in this place. Susie, I'm the pastor here, and Susie was a beautiful embodiment. And boy, I hope to achieve someday the high praise of that accolade in particular, where someone who maybe shares a different cosmovision or view of God or whatever would say that I was gracious in the sharing of that. Susie can hear you, and I think that is high praise. I don't know where you went, Laura, but you touched my heart with that. There you are, yes. So this is how we memorialize those that we love. This is how we release them. This is how we begin the work of grief, is through telling stories. And so you've been hearing some fun stories. I heard some things today that I had never heard before. I have a couple for you, and then a reading, and then we'll have a dance in a minute here. It was, I think, about 8:31 p.m. exactly that Saturday night, which was the night of the Austin Pride Parade, which, of course, found Trey and I with a bunch of our people downtown. It was at about exactly 8:31. We were doing our thing down there when I started thinking about Susie. And it had been a couple of days where she had been on my mind. I think all of us who were close knew what was coming next. And I remember asking Trey, what was the update? Did he know anything? Was there anything new? And we hadn't heard. But something in me in that moment, in that precise moment, in that conversation, however long it was after that, we were chatting about that, something in me just felt just a relief. And it was about an hour later that we heard that she had in fact passed. It's not necessary to pinpoint the exact seconds and the moments. And I'm not sure that I felt her life end so much as I felt her suffering cease. I felt it, and we were way across town. It had been a hard couple of months for Susie and Juan. There had been a lot of loss, a lot of pain. I remember the burning hot tears praying with Susie here after a Sunday morning service, and they weren't about her situation. Susie's concern was for someone that she loved that she had just lost, and that was Susie. She wasn't even concerned about her end coming. It had been a lot of setbacks one after another. But I think it's important for us to say, and Juan touched on this, that we cannot remember Susie this way, with these limitations in this ending chapter. We must not. Even though there were many, that's not what she would have wanted. That's not what she would have wanted. I think about the people in my church, about all of the isms, and you've forgotten one. And instantaneously, I felt the shock and the weight and the horror of committing that blind mistake that I'm responsible for. So I said, Susie, clear your week. We're going to figure this out. I called a very dear friend of mine who is a professor up in Dallas who writes provocatively on the subject of abilities and ableism in the church and theology, and he does an amazing work. I said, you got to get down here next Sunday, and we're going to do something we've never done, and I just think it needs to happen. And so Trey's like, I'll find out. I'll buy a ramp. We go on Amazon.com. You know, Jeff Bezos will bail us out. As you can tell, this church was built in 1969, and none of these considerations were top of mind. That's my embarrassment. We're building something new that will all come in due time. But for the moment, we had to have Amazon bail us out. So Dr. Tim's coming in from Dallas. We began to collect our thoughts, and we put this ramp down to roll Susie's chair up on stage, and she taught us for about an hour that Sunday morning. It's one of the precious moments to me in my 10 years here at ANC. And the moment she was done, she rolled back down, and you know what? the thing that embarrassed me the most is that she pulled me aside and she says, and you're about to take it down. And this says everything you need to know about my reality. The center of our community has been put just beyond where my arm can reach. And that's because how you guys have tolerated the building of that community. And I bear that with me every single day. I'm embarrassed of the realities of what it is to move around a building built in 1969 and have to suffer the shame of having to go out the side doors and around the back to use the only facilities on the property that will allow them entrance. And it's a poignant story, and I tell it to you as a vulnerable way of just saying, she never stopped teaching us. And she did it so gracefully. Now, had she yelled at me, it could have been a different thing, but when she would pull you close to tell you what she needed, there just was never going to be a no to that. It was always going to be, yes, ma'am, we can do that. And it was partly in the way she did it. And to me, that's the example that's how I will remember her. That's how those who have departed, that's how they still live on. Now, we couldn't have known this in the ancient world, and I'm about to read a passage from Paul. Paul certainly couldn't have known anything about all of this, but what we understand to be true now about the world is that nothing really goes anywhere. It transforms and it changes its sort of arrangement, but nothing really goes anywhere. And so I would beg you to think of that. Susie can be as present as your memories can be summoned from within you. Can you guys remember the smell of your grandmother's kitchen? Where's your grandma? She's right here. I will never walk into my church, walk past the notch midway through, and not think of Susie Angel. And I think she lives in that way. So we don't grieve. Sorry, I've been fighting in the old world, we would have called it a cold. Now everybody thinks it's the end of the world. Just a cold. We don't grieve as those who understand death as the final word, though, you see. Here's the thing. Death is the central metaphor of our faith. Actually, not death, precisely speaking, death as a doorway to new life is the central metaphor. And that doesn't require religious affiliation to understand that things that fall and break and open and regenerate, life goes on. And so death is a doorway into new life. And so Paul, with the vision of an ancient man, wrote these words to a church gathered in a city called Corinth. And it must have been important for him to understand that those that he was writing to understood death, that it wasn't final, that it was just a passageway. And so he writes these words. He writes, now I want you to understand, brothers and sisters, the good news that I proclaim to you, which you in turn received, in which also you stand, through which you also are being saved. Verse 12, now if Christ is proclaimed as raised from the dead, how can some of you say there is no resurrection from the dead? It must have been on their minds. Our loved ones are gone and they're never coming back. And so Paul writes to remind them. How can you say there's no resurrection of the dead? For if the dead are not raised, then Christ has not been raised. If Christ has not been raised, then your faith is futile, and you are still in your sins. Then those also who have died in Christ have perished. But in fact, Christ has been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who have died. And hear his heart here as a father. Verse 35, but someone will ask, how are the dead raised? With what kind of body do they come back? Paul writes, you fool. What you sow does not come back to life unless it dies. And as for what you sow, you do not sow the body that is to be but a bare seed, perhaps of wheat or some other grain, but God gives it a body as he has chosen, and to each kind of seed its own body. And I can't stop daydreaming about the body Susie has. We know the body she had and how she was able to move through the world with dignity and beauty and artistically in that way. But I wonder what her body looks like now. Paul finishes off this idea. What is sown is perishable, but what is raised is imperishable. It is sown in dishonor, it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, it is raised in power. It is sown in a physical body, and it is raised a spiritual body. If there is a physical body, there is also a spiritual body. Verse 54, when this perishable body puts on imperishability and this mortal body puts on immortality, then the saying that is written will be fulfilled. O death, death has been swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your sting? But thanks be to God who gives the victory through Christ Jesus our Lord. And I would say you don't have to have a faith to believe those words. You could say, watch a seed fall and watch a tree grow. It's the same concept. It's the same idea. And so Susie, a couple of times in this last few minutes, I've heard each of us almost stop and talk to her directly. And I would just encourage you to do that. Susie, we remember you. We see you. We see you. We hear you. And we will take everything you taught us into consideration as we constantly build a better community. Now we're going to have an open mic for a couple of moments. And Trey says to urge everyone in parentheses to keep it at 1 minute max. I wonder if there might be a story burning inside you that you might want to share with all of us. Come on.
Okay, we are Susie's work family at the Coalition of Texans with Disabilities, and there's a few others here, so we're going to take some brief comments. I'm Dennis. I'm fortunate enough to lead that organization. So what I want to tell you is, real briefly, about a month or so ago when we were talking, and Susie was in, I didn't know it at that time, her final month or so, and we were talking, and I was at her house, and I said something like, Laura, who you've heard from before, is going to cover all these things for me, because she was asking me, who's going to cover your work while you're helping us out? I said, Laura's going to cover it. And Susie said, hiring Laura was the second best thing you've ever done at CTD. And I said, well, so what was the first thing, Susie? And she said, hiring me. Anyone who works at CTD can be tapped on the shoulder and said, you're going to do public policy and advocacy work. Susie was hired as a researcher and editor, and she was excellent in both. And I tapped on her shoulder many times. The story I'm going to tell you, I tapped on her shoulder to help me get a dental benefit for adults with disabilities in the Texas Medicaid program, which didn't exist. That means if you were an adult with disabilities, like about 85% of the adults, never had a dental visit in their adult lifehood. And as many of you know, that, Susie was an example of that. So it took us 5 years to pass it, but in the first session, I did all the background work, and I got a call from the Senate committee. Said, we're gonna hear your bill, and the chair's gonna give extra long testimony to you to come in and explain it. I said, that's great, but I'm not gonna give that testimony. My colleague, Susie Angel, is gonna give that testimony. They didn't know Susie. At that hearing, in the Senate chamber, one of the most powerful rooms in this city, Susie rolled up to that mic and told that story, and I rolled up with her to handle her paperwork. But what I did is watch the faces of the senators that were listening to her, and I saw jaws drop. And at that moment, I thought, you know what? We're never supposed to be able to pass this bill. Maybe we will. Last year, we did, and Susie came back in there.
Hey everyone, my name's Denise Ellison, and I work with the Coalition, and Susie was my colleague. But for a moment, let's remember this is a celebration of her life. So, yes, she was an angel, and yes, she did great things, but I gotta tell you, she was a hoot and a holler. When I was being interviewed to come on to the Coalition of Texans, she asked me a few questions, and I said, I'm sorry, I didn't understand you. Would you repeat yourself? She was kind enough to do that. I get hired. Years go by, and I have been accused of this many times, especially by Dennis Burrell. Sometimes when we're in negotiations, whether it's trying to find financing for a building or other negotiations, I sometimes turn into this little sweet thing, and I get this accent, and I do not know where it comes from. But I must have been in my office, and I was talking to someone on the phone, and Susie comes up to my office, and she said, again, I hope lightning does not strike, what the hell was that? I said, oh, what are you talking about? All that stuff you were saying in there, what the hell were you saying? I couldn't understand a word you said. So it made me think back on how many similarities we had, not the differences. And I dare you to try and laugh as hard as she did and not snort It's impossible. And there have been embarrassing times when she and I would be on the porch at the coalition of our building, and we would be laughing and snorting, and people from the veterinarian office would come around the side to see if there was a swine festival going on. So let's keep the love of Susie in our heart. Remember all the wonderful things that she did, but also let's keep her in our hearts for what she was. She was Susie, our Susie. We love her.
So now I'm no longer Jackie. I get a chance to, yes. But I actually want to build on your story of the ramp. So I've known Susie, I don't even know how long now. It was long before CTD and Juan, when we used to do adaptive sports programs, and they would show up to take the kids out with us, and they were always there. It didn't matter. The two always show up no matter what. And they were two peas in a pod always. Juan's strengths were Susie's weaknesses, and Susie's weaknesses were Juan's strengths. But nothing really stopped either one of them. And if you teased them or teased Susie anytime, she gave me that same look you got, sitting down there more than once. So when we first hired her, I remember her resume coming in, and I was like, oh, Susie, this is great. Well, I got a call right before that. And she was like, I'm going to come in, and I'm applying for the job. Is that okay? I was like, of course. And so afterwards, after all the people that had come through, Dennis was sold. I didn't even have to try and sell Susie. I was just, I left it up to Dennis to make that decision because I knew her so well. And the years went by, and her faith has been so strong the whole time. And I know of those problems she had early on trying to find a church that was a good, accepting church that really did step up to the mic. And over those times, I still remember sitting in my office and hearing her chair coming and that click, click. And I'm going, okay, am I about to get in trouble? Yeah. What did I do? And she came in with the biggest smile on her face. And she told me that story. She goes, I could not do it. I had to sit down there, and I stared them down until I was going to come in and make sure that, that the church was going to be accessible for everyone. And we'd had some long talks. Susie's faith was so deep, and I, like Laura, am probably not the most faithful, but she was amazing at opening up people's eyes and allowing them, and to me, the epitome of service is what she dedicated her life to. And the whole time, we talked about ramps, acceptance, and early on, and I think the one time I probably almost got myself fired, or at least thought so, was when I was in the Capitol, and I was talking to a legislator, and they had a bill filed that basically would have made it so that any church and any property they owned did not have to be accessible at all. That could mean that even a private strip mall that might be owned by the church or something. And so I went in to talk to him. Here's the one person that's probably not the best representative, but I knew how much it meant to Susie and Juan. And while I was in there, we got into an argument. And Advocacy 101, don't yell at a representative or a senator. Usually I'm very good at this rule. That day I exploded in the middle of the office, face to face with that legislator, when he said, well, if a church wants to be a church of no people with disabilities, they have that right. And I lost it. And it was because of all of what Susie had gone through, what she believed, and if ever there's a place that should be the most accepting, be the most energized, to have any and everyone come in, that was the place. And y'all did an amazing job. She's talked about this place for so long, and I think they really did find a family. And I miss her, and more than once I got that look myself. And I will always stick by and do the things I know when I'm making a mistake, not to get myself in trouble. but we'll carry on with everything, and thank you all for coming.
Hi, I'm William, another one of Susie's co-workers, and I just remember a couple of things about her. Before we moved into our own building, the coalition was leasing offices from the Texas State Teachers Association. She and I were sort of sharing an office, and after about a month in there, she told me, you know, there's not an accessible door handle to this office. So I've got an office, but I can't get in. And I'm looking at her thinking, I've been working here for how many years, and I didn't notice there's not an accessible handle to her door. So she had to point out a problem that we overlooked for a little while. And the other thing that comes to mind is I run the film festival, and every time we pick a film, we try to get some sort of hook, something that would encourage people to come to the festival so they not only get to see the movie, but they get to see something extra going along with it. And I ran across a movie called Musical Chairs, which is about a dancer who gets in a car accident, and all of a sudden she has to learn to do wheelchair dancing. And I talked with Susie about this, and she said, oh, that would be perfect for the festival. I can bring in a whole group of wheelchair dancers, and we can show an ability dance before the festival. And that turned out to be a really sold-out crowd that evening. So, that's my story.
Hi, I'm Celia Hughes, and I don't work for the Coalition of Texans with Disabilities. I'm the executive director of Arts Park, Texas, and the proud friend of Juan and Susie for almost 20 years. And there's 3 things you need to know about me before I get started. One is that I'm generally always late. So I didn't hear the first few tributes, so if what I'm saying is a repeat, I apologize. Maybe there's only 2 things you need to know about me. The other thing is that, that this is not really an open mic, because we'd have Boy cutting us off, Miss Boy cutting us off at 1 minute. And that I want to congratulate you on your ramp, because it's really well done, and you've adjusted the heights really well. I'm not quite sure it's in compliance, but I think you've done a really, really good job of that, and thank you very much for that. But what I want to say is that I'm the proud, I can proudly say that I was never a recipient of one of Susie's stares. That Susie and Juan came to Art Spark years ago as part of our theater program that was called Actual Lives. And that was where we assisted people with disabilities to tell their stories, how to craft their story into a performance piece, and then to put that performance on a stage. And we did that for 10 years. We did 48 original performances by and with people with disabilities. We helped the Doherty Art Center build their ramp to the stage. And so that was where I met Susie, and that was a big aha moment for me when I saw Susie. I met her, and I went up to her and I said, Susie, we'll get you a scribe. We'll help you write your story. And she was like, no, just put me on the floor. Just put my computer on the floor. And she proceeded to kneel, she was on the floor. She proceeded to get out of her chair, as those of you who have seen, sliding down and landing on her knees, and then typing with her nose. And I looked at that and I thought, okay. So I went up to her after the class and I said, can I buy you a mat? And she was like, yeah, that would be great. So I bought a mat. I bought two because I wasn't sure which one was going to work. And she did her writing when she was with us in the class on that mat with her nose. And I had never seen that before, and I've been working with people with disabilities since I was 11, which was, maybe a year or two ago. And I had never seen that before, and that was a huge moment for me. And then the other moment was when we Actualize morphed into a dance company, an integrated dance company. And the reason that happened was twofold. One was one of our longtime Actualizers, Tanya Winters, one day wrote a piece. And we worked with her and we said, we think this needs to be a dance. And so that became a dance. And so I was like, okay, that's nice. Well, we've kind of expanded now, and we're doing movement and with Actual Lives. And then Susie was there, and Susie was like, I have always been a dancer. I was a dancer when I was a little girl. And Tanya was like, so was I. She said, I used to dance in the living room when I was a little girl. And I was like, okay, now we have a dance program. So, and those of you who know me well know I always cry. No matter what. I can cry at commercials, I can cry at anything, but I am crying for the loss of a very sweet soul. And I'm proud. I'm proud of all we've done. And I'm really proud of you, Juan, for all and your strength and your character. Juan has been a board member at ArtSpark Texas for many years and has brought his lived experience and his love to our group. And I thank you for that and for sharing Susie with us for all of these years. Thank you.
I'm going to be a little bit more of a stickler on the 1 minute thing.
I got it.
Okay,
no problem,
good.
No problem. Okay.
I was like 10, 20, 30. No, we're fine.
Okay. My name is Megan, and I had the pleasure of working with Susie when she volunteered at the Thinkery. And she volunteered at the Thinkery when I had been working there and I just had my first child. And her favorite area to be in the Thinkery was near the toddlers and infants section. And so she was able to not just be my awesome, very reliable coworker, but also witness my first child playing for the first time. We moved away and then came back, and I had had a second baby, and the first place I came was the Thinkery. And no one else remembered me, which is fine. But guess who was volunteering that day? Susie. And Susie remembered me. And it was awesome. And part two is, still going fast, right? Okay. Part two is that Susie and I also belong to a cancer support group of people that have had cancer in their lives. And I am a professor in the art department at UT Austin now, and I was there, I think showing, Ryan, I don't remember if it was showing the Brazilian dance thing or visual art, but whatever I showed, I thought everyone would be really excited and impressed by the visual art and Brazilian jazz combo we had been sort of intertwining with different cancer communities. And it seemed to go okay. And at the very end of it, Susie was like, it's all right. But I want you to know that dance is the highest form of art. And she rocked. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amber, and I really will be 1 minute because I didn't know Susie as well as probably most other people here in the room. But I met her through Art Sparks' Body Shift program. And I was living in San Antonio at the time when I first started coming to Body Shift. And I had come a few times and had, talked to her after class. And I'm an occupational therapist. So after a few sessions, I had, when I had talked to her, I had some difficulty understanding her, but I got some words, and I would ask her to repeat things. And I just thought I would be a helpful occupational therapist. And I asked her one day, I said, Susie, how come you don't have a communication device? Well, she told me, because I don't want one, like that. And I was just like, oh. And I realized, as an occupational therapist and personally, I was like, well, yeah, that's fine. She doesn't want one. But yeah, that's my story about Susie. So.
Save the last for better, or better for last. No, my name's Nancy Crowther, and I've known Susie and Juan since they were almost born. Actually, they came to me in a previous life. Right now, I'm retired from Capital Metro, and I had worked hard at Capital Metro. I got to work with the public, and not only the public, but persons with disabilities, and they were all pissed off at paratransit. So I got to get beat every month. Anyway, after years of therapy, Juan and Susie came to our group, and at first, I saw Susie. Of course, I saw Juan because he's so handsome, but I tried not to distract myself. Anyway, so Susie comes up to me, and she's driving her chair with her foot. And I'm like, oh my, how does she do that? This is going to be hard. How's she going to get on a bus? Oh my. And she says, relax, I can do it. I said, okay, I'll let you have that one. But then she started talking, and I looked at her with my mouth open and went, I've been working with a lot of people with a lot of disabilities and a lot of anger, but hers was soft. I still couldn't understand her. But she was so calm and so patient to let me hear her words and understand them. And that really got to my heart because I thought, man, I finally got me a warrior, someone that's going to work with me, who has challenges, and who understands the issues of people with disabilities. There weren't many back in the day, but now they're all here. So I just want to say that my favorite act, and I always asked her about this, was the story she did about Maurice. How about Maurice, everybody? You remember that one? That was her right arm. It was her right arm that was out of control. And I used to always ask her, Is Maurice coming? And she'd get this big smile and she'd go, I hope not. But wherever she is in heaven, I know, because today I saw a flower blooming. I saw a butterfly on that flower. That was Susie. She's always with us. She's in the air. She's dancing, she's singing, she's hugging each one of us. And to know that she was faithful to God and to everybody she knew. So God bless her.
My name is Christian. I'm one of the many in the multitude of people that Susie loved, and so I'm so grateful for that. First, let me ask a question. How many knew that Susie is a movie star? Raise a hand. Okay. For those that don't know, please ask Juan about it after, because it's a great, great story. She's really beautiful in that epic movie that I got to attend, the world premiere of. Everything that everybody said is just spot on. I love the generosity, the kind of generous heart, the gentle and fantastic, bombastic spirit, and then her artistic excellence. That's what really strikes me. And so here's a little story. It's a very short one about how all of those are interwoven together, okay? We were invited, Michelle and I were invited to go to the performance of the interpretive dance and movement, okay, at the Contemporary Art Museum downtown. And so we go, and really excited about it, and I've been told that I've missed a lot of social cues, and so what happened next was a bit embarrassing, but so everyone in the area to see this performance, everyone is lining the walls, okay? And Michelle and I are two of those people. And I see Susie off away from everybody. And I look over there and I'm like, that's just not right. Why is she all by herself? We need to, this is not right. And so I walk over there, and I go over, and I'm just like in front of everybody, and I go over and give her a big hug. Hey, Susie, good to see you. And she looked up at me. It was this wonderful look on her face. It was nonverbal communication. She looked at me and like, what are you doing here? And so I then asked, I said, did I just interrupt the performance? And she looks up at me, and with a little chuckle, she says, yes. And so I got off the stage, went back to my little spot on the wall, and after the performance, which was grand, Juan, you were excellent in it as well. Oh my goodness, you too, forced to be reckoned with. After the performance, she comes up to me, and she says, it's okay. Don't be embarrassed. And so she made it all right in that moment. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. We're going to welcome the Body Shift Collective now.
Don't worry, family. I'm dancing with angels. Don't worry, family. I'm dancing with God. Don't you be crying. I'm dancing with angels. Whirling and twirling and laughing with God. 'Cause where we all are is at the beginning. Where we are now is where it all starts. What we will be is lost in the living. Who we will be is found in our hearts. So don't worry, family. I'm dancing with angels. Don't worry, family. I'm dancing with God. Don't you be crying. I'm dancing with angels. Whirling and twirling and laughing with God. Whirling and twirling and laughing with God.
Amen. Nice job. Very nice. Pray with me, if you would. For those of us that call you Heavenly Father, for those of us that call you Heavenly Mother, for those of us that don't call you at all, Father, I pray your peace. I pray your comfort in this time. I pray you remain close to the family and close to the friends of Susie. And Susie, you look beautiful, sweetheart. We love you. May the Lord bless and keep you. May make his face shine upon you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Let's get out of here. Hey, listen. Join us behind here in the community center. Susie's favorite food was pasta. That's what I've been told. We've got enough pasta to feed 4 times you people. So please join us back there. Grab a little bit, eat a salad, have a sweet tea with me, and hang out with us for a few minutes. We'd love to talk to you. And Juan would too. So see y'all back there.